So we're here with the Drivers Project special. We're talking to Justin Peck, who's probably one of the most sought after free agents this year in sprint car racing. Justin, you just had a pretty good trophy cup. You picked up a preliminary night win. Could you talk us through how you ended up on Clayton Snow's team and how your weekend went?
Yeah, so the first time I went out and drove for Clayton was back in 2018 at Trophy Cup, and I actually junked everything he had in the trailer and everything that he owned. We tore up every wing. I think I blew every motor. I flipped up both of his race cars, and for some reason, he decided he was going to bring me back out to race at Tulare again a couple years later, and we've kind of just built a little bit of a package with that race car. That particular car we're running, I drove for him in 2022 in a 410 show at Tulare, and we ran Trophy Cup with it last year, and then we ran it a couple times this year, and now ran it at Trophy Cup again. So we've just kind of built a nice little package with that thing, man. I mean, he's built me a brand new spare car, and I told him I didn't want to run it, so that's the car that we had upstairs, and we've just been friends for a couple years now, and just I mean, I feel good working with him, and it seems like we have a nice little package, so I enjoy driving that thing.
So when the year started, was the plan geared towards Trophy Cup, or was it just a race when you had opportunities in California?
Yeah, our whole when we left Trophy Cup last year, our whole goal was to just try things and get better, to specifically to go back to Trophy Cup. And unfortunately, it didn't work out that I wasn't able to run Tulare in that car at all this year. But we felt good by going to Placerville. We ran it at Chico, and just kind of felt like if we could get our car dialed in at those couple racetracks, we'd have a pretty solid package going in Tulare. And it seemed to work. I mean, we were able to pick up the first night and had a really strong car and should have been on the podium the second night, and jumped a restart and got penalized a couple spots. And at that point, the rubber was kind of coming in, and I just couldn't really move much anywhere else. So we ended up fourth that night. And every time we hit the racetrack last weekend, we had a really strong race car, except for the final feature, and we completely shit the bed on that one. That was a rough feeling, because we had a game plan, and we perfectly executed our game plan, other than it didn't work.
So at the start of the year, I think people were really surprised when the high limit season kicked off, and you racers that were all-star racers were really kicking ass and very fast. What do you attribute that to? I've said that it was everyone going to new tracks with no notebooks and the Ohio racers being better on those sort of surfaces. Is that correct, or was it something else?
Yeah, I mean, when we went to, we started off the year at East Bay for the first high limit point show, which was great for the all-star guys. I mean, we'd been going there for, how many winters now in February, and getting some laps in there. So that was really nice. And especially when, you got guys like McFadden and Casey and Brad Sweet, those guys aren't really used to running at East Bay. They haven't really been there. So I think we had a little bit of a leg up on them the first two nights, and then rolled into Georgia, where, like you said, nobody had a notebook for. I mean, that was something completely new to all of us. And it was a slick, dirty racetrack, just like, the all-star guys like in Ohio. So I think that definitely played a big factor into that. But then, from that point on, it seemed like we went to a lot of stuff in the Midwest that either A, we hadn't really been to, or B, was, a track the Outlaws had been to. So it seemed like we kind of all got our butts kicked after that.
So I was surprised at the end of the year. We were getting down to it, and I realized you didn't have a high limit win yet, which was pretty shocking to me. And then you were able to pull one off at Eldora. Could you take us through that night?
Yeah, Eldora was pretty cool. We knew kind of going into that weekend we were going to be pretty solid. It seems like the 13 car and myself have always kind of been pretty fast at Eldora. I mean, we might not always start in the front, but it seems like we pass a lot of cars come race time, or we tend to qualify well, and can usually start up front there and kind of maintain and hold our own. So, we went into Kings Royal and was able to pick off a podium, and we felt like we had a really good package that could qualify, that could race, that could hold its own out front. And we just kept doing that. We just rolled that into Four Crown weekend, and everything kind of lined for us. We qualified good, drew the 8 in the dash, but was able to run second, or 6. I drew the 6 in the dash or whatever it was, and was able to run second. So getting on that front row at Eldora is huge, especially when you don't have to pass Rico or Brad or guys like that. So I think that helped us a lot that night. But just on top of that, we were just kind of on kill. I was really confident and felt like that was my best shot left to get a win with the high limit series, and we were able to capitalize on it.
So now you got your win, and now you're rideless. And you and the Boot team have actually had a pretty good run together. In the sprint car world, it was basically, in the sprint car world, that was a decade.
Yeah.
Now you found yourself as a free agent. There was a lot of rumors that you were going to one team, and it sounds like that's not happening. What's it like to be a free agent when you're making your living as a racer and you're not one of these guys that tends to bring money to rides?
Yeah, for most of the year, I felt like I knew where I was going to end up, and was able to finish out the last part of the year, kind of knowing where I was going to go. And then that all kind of went upside down after the banquet, and I, kind of got the notification I wasn't going to be driving that car I thought I was going to. So for the last week or so, it's been kind of hectic. I mean, I've just been calling a lot of guys and talking to a lot of guys and texting a lot of people and having meetings here and having meetings there. And, luckily I can say that I've found a good home for the rest of the season and next year. And, hopefully that'll be released this week.
How much of a relief is that, having something nice lined up?
Yeah, I think it's tough when you don't know where you're going to end up, and that this late in the year, there's not a whole lot of ride opportunities available out there, at least quality ride opportunities left, and so you really got to kind of take advantage of them, of what pops up and what's available. So, fortunately, I think I probably ended up with the best option I could have ended up with, even if I had been searching all year long. I think this is one of the best opportunities you can be involved in. So I'm pretty excited about that. I really look forward to what we are able to accomplish, in these next couple weeks, and then hopefully, attack a championship next season.
Without giving away the ride, did you have a preference of a World of Outlaws or High Limit ride? Did it matter to you which series you followed?
Me personally, not so much, because I really do like the High Limit series, and then obviously I've ran it already for a year. But it wasn't necessarily, do or die whether we ran the High Limit series or the World of Outlaw series, because, my whole life, I mean, my goal's been to be a World of Outlaw champion. So for me, that's still kind of the main focus, or what's in the driving force in the back of my mind of where I want to be as a sprint car driver. But it's hard to only think that way now with how competitive a High Limit series is and kind of what they're trying to do for sprint car racing. So, sounds more or less like we're going to be back right where I was. But we'll just kind of have to wait and see. I know, like a lot of the talk this year about me, at least, was whether I'm going to be switching from Outlaws to High Limit. But I think that's more or less what's best for the team type of thing. And I think it just kind of depends on your situation, what your team wants to do.
Now, I spoke to you earlier, and I said I kind of wanted to get into your driving style. You're one of the few, I find guys that are good on the slick usually don't race as hard as you. What do you attribute that to?
I don't really know. I think, for most of my career, before I got into sprint cars, I ran like micros and midgets and dabbled a little bit into payment late model stuff. And I was always a wide open guy, do things now, ask questions later after you're hurt or after you ballpark the car. So it just kind of got to a point where I put myself in a hospital running a midget one night, and I didn't remember the crash. I still to this day don't remember the crash at all. But the next day, when I woke up back at home after going to the hospital and all that stuff, I walked out to the shop with my dad, and he'd already had the car unloaded, and I was just looking at the shrapnel that was left. And, that's probably the third race car I tore up that year driving for my dad. And he pretty much said, look, when you're healed up, I can build you one more race car, and then you're going to have to figure it out from there. So you better not tear it up. And that was kind of when I was probably, 16 at that time, maybe 17. And that was really figure out like, okay, we're not messing around. This isn't kids play anymore. Then going to the Ohio stuff, definitely kind of taught me the finesse side of stuff, just racing the dry, slick, dirty stuff all the time, and understanding kind of how to keep the bars loaded in a wing sprint car, and using a brake pedal a lot more, and just kind of understanding that you don't always have to be so herky-jerky on the throttle, and it's a lot more slow, like quick, slow movements. I know quick, slow is hard to describe, but that's kind of what it is. And, I think just doing that really kind of helped me understand that. But, I've always had the wide open kind of style throughout most of my career. So that's like what's comfortable for me. That's what I like to do, but it's nice to be able to have all kinds of tricks in the bag.
So, is there anything you want to work on this year as a driver? Is there anything that bothers you that you're not better at that you're going to be trying to improve, or are you just pretty much fine tuning at this point?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's fine tuning. I think everyone would kind of say that they feel pretty confident in most of their abilities, but I think my biggest thing that maybe has, I don't want to say hindered, but what I feel like I've lacked the most or what I've struggled with the most is just knowing when to change, lines and when to move around and the right timing of it all. Like, I know going into each race, like, okay, there's going to be times when you're going to have to move around and the bottom's going to be good to start, but then you're going to have to move to the top and then it might come back down. Or, a lot of times I think, I'm going to be the first one to go to the top. Well, the top's still dirty. And now you just got passed by another race car. So I think my timing of everything needs to be better. I feel like I have a pretty good understanding of what needs to be done. I just don't have a very good understanding of when it all needs to be done. So I think that for me, if I can kind of clean that aspect up and that part of my craft up, that would be probably what benefits me the most.
So, what will be a successful season for you this year? What do you feel like is a realistic, attainable goal for you?
Yeah, I want to get back to competing for wins more consistently. I think is the start of everything. But the goal I feel like is achievable. I want to, I want to win 10 races across the board this next coming year and run top 5 in the championship that we're going to race for. So whether that be, 5 high limit wins, five local wins, 5 high limit wins. I don't really care as long as we can put some W's in put some marks in the W column. I think would be the biggest thing. But if we could pull off 5 series wins and a top 5, I think that'd be a pretty good year.
Okay, thank you very much for taking the time to do this.
Yeah, no problem, man. Thanks for having me.